Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown. And in today's video, guys, someone in the comment section asked me to make this video yesterday. So here it is. Should the Toronto Maple Leafs be interested in trading for Jakob Chychrun? It was part of Elliot Friedman's 32 Thoughts column from December the 15th saying that Arizona GM Bill Armstrong refused to comment when asked, but it sounds like the Coyotes are gauging the market on Jakob Chychrun. I've heard the ask is massive, but that doesn't mean opponents are running away. He signed for 3 more years at a very reasonable $4.6 million annual average value and is a terrific player. This is one to watch. What makes this contract so attractive to basically every other team in the league aside from the Coyotes is that $4.6 million cap hit and the fact that there's 3 more seasons left on it after this one. It's a similar situation to the one that they were in the summer when they traded Christian Dvorak to the Montreal Canadiens, though. It's a backloaded deal. And they've already taken advantage of the 2 seasons where they were able to pay him less than his annual average value. And in the subsequent years, that number goes above a couple of times. And there's even a modified no trade clause that kicks in the last 2 years of this deal. The fact that he's 23, turning 24, and the team has committed to do a full rebuild, maybe this is the Coyotes looking to cash in on the value that Jakob Chychrun has for the player that he is on the ice, but also in this contract. Like I said, it's the same sort of situation as the one that they were in the summer with Christian Dvorak, where he's a 25-year-old centerman in the NHL who's scored between 15 and 20 goals for the last couple of seasons, is a useful player on anyone's team, and is signed to a reasonable contract. But the same sort of thing. It's a backloaded deal. They got to take advantage of the first 2 years where they got to pay him less than what his annual average value is, and then they promptly shipped him off afterwards. If we're just looking at some surface numbers here, and don't worry, we will dive into the advanced analytics and his role with the Coyotes to see how that would impact the numbers and obviously how he would fit in with the Toronto Maple Leafs and what they would have to give up to acquire him. But the thing that stands out to me right away is that average time on ice, right? 22, 23, 24 minutes a night the last 3 seasons. He's an absolute horse and a number 1 defenseman. If we're taking a look at evolvinghockey.com or Evolving Wild on Twitter, we'll see that Jakob Chychrun ranks 9th among all NHL defenders over the last 3 seasons in expected goals above replacement. And just to get a gauge on where the other Maple Leaf defenders rank, I believe Jake Muzzin is 27th, TJ Brodie is 31st, and Morgan Rielly is 58th. The 1920 season wasn't too kind to Morgan. Just to sidetrack for a second here, Morgan is having a hell of a year this year, and every time I get an opportunity to point that out, I will, because he's one of my favorite Leafs. But this season has not been too kind to Jakob Chychrun, especially offensively, and that's been his bread and butter, especially if you're looking at that 18-goal number and you're salivating all over the place because you're like, oh my god, a defenseman that can shoot, and he's available. We need that for our power play. But the Coyotes are one of the worst teams in the NHL this year. In fact, they started the year 0-9-1 and haven't really improved since then. So I don't know how much I want to judge Jakob Chychrun for his season this year. Maybe if we're looking at the stats relative to the rest of his teammates, which we will a little bit later on, before we dive into how he fits in with the Maple Leafs and what they would have to give up to acquire him, we can get a little bit of a better picture. If we're taking a look at the isolated impacts here for Jakob Chychrun from just this year from hockeyviz.com or at Ineffective Math on Twitter, can you guess what side of the ice Jakob Chychrun plays on? It's the left side, and this is absolutely hilarious because you can see that there is offense being generated here from decent areas. And on the right side of the offensive zone, it's just an absolute black hole, and it's the same thing on the power play as well. And for a guy who's not necessarily known for his defensive play, he's been more or less break even with not very much help on an awful team. If we're taking a look at his wins above replacement card from JFresh Hockey here, you can see that massive drop off offensively, but I don't think that has anything to do with him. I think that's just because the Coyotes basically have nobody else on the ice. It's him and 4 other guys that are trying to play offense, but I guess it's just not working out very well. But defensively, you can see the improvement here. This is a guy who's 23, 24 years old. He could potentially still get better. You know, defensemen tend to mature a little bit later on. He's a great player. Taking a look at the salary cap situation for the Leafs heading into next season, you can see even with the salary cap going up by $1 million and with Phil Kessel's $1.2 million in retained salary coming off of the books, the money is somewhat tight. I've added Alex Steeves here as a placeholder just because he makes in and around what an extra forward would. They got a little under $6.4 million to go out there and re-sign guys like Jack Campbell, Anze Kasha, Rasmus Sandin, Timothy Liljegren, and still fill in a couple of other holes on this roster. It's already looking pretty tight without adding Jakob Chychrun's $4.6 million cap hit in here. But that is with guys like a Justin Holl, Travis Dermott, Alex Kerfoot, and Nick Ritchie still on the roster, even Peter Mrazek. You know, if you're acquiring a guy like a Jakob Chychrun, you would consider moving some of those other guys out to make the situation work. So I think a pretty easy one right away, Justin Holl. To move out that $2 million there gives you a little bit of extra breathing room here, but adding in Chychrun's $4.6 million cap hit, $3.7 million is definitely not enough money to re-sign Liljegren, Sandin, Kasha, and Campbell. If you haven't watched my video already that I did on projecting Jack Campbell's next contract, I will leave that linked above the screen and at the end of the video, so make sure to check that out. But we looked at a bunch of different goalies that have signed over the last couple of years and where Jack Campbell's numbers over this year and last year kind of rank between them. And we came up with about $4.5 million between 3 and 4 years is a fair deal. But Jack's also having a hell of a year and he's gotten better since I made that video. So he may price himself out of those comparables by the end of it. Who knows? So if we add in that hypothetical $4.5 million a year deal for Jack Campbell here, we're already over the salary cap and we don't have Kasha re-signed. There's no Liljegren, there's no Sandin, and there's not really a fourth line. This is why I wanted to take a look at this before I talked about what the Maple Leafs would have to give up to acquire Jakob Chychrun, because maybe one of Sandin and Liljegren are included in this hypothetical deal. Maybe it's one of those guys and a first-round pick. Maybe it's one of those guys and 2 first-round picks. Maybe it's 2 first-round picks and Nick Robertson and Rodion Amirov. Maybe it's 2 first-round picks and just Rodion Amirov. The ask is astronomical. According to Elliot Friedman, and the Arizona Coyotes are going fishing, and they are looking to come up with the biggest possible catch. Maybe the Maple Leafs consider moving on from Peter Mrazek. I don't know. That's not necessarily where I would lean towards, but it's Jakob Chychrun. You know, maybe you take the mindset, and I'm not saying that I am, that, hey, the Leafs need a backup goalie, and if he's always going to be injured, what's good in paying him $3.8 million and having him take up that much when you can maybe give a spot to Joseph Woll for under $1 million? And he's looked pretty good in the couple of games that he's played. And hey, $3.785 million, that's probably enough money to get Liljegren and Sandin re-signed, but you're still missing Kasha and 2 more guys to fill out the rest of this roster. I don't know what Kasha's next deal is going to look like. He's been injured a lot the last couple of years. He's having a fantastic season, being a real Swiss Army knife for the Leafs, scoring 5-on-5, being effective on the power play, being a good defensive player on a shutdown line. I have no idea what that contract's going to be. I'm just enjoying him being on the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, and I think that that's the mindset that everyone should take. He's an RFA at the end of this year, so they do have some control in that sense, but I have no idea what that deal looks like. Just to throw out some numbers for Liljegren and Sandin here, just so that we can picture them on the team. We got $785,000 worth of space, and that's probably enough to get 1 guy on this 4th line, but we're still missing 2 spots here. Maybe you look to move out a Nick Ritchie, and you can use the savings there, and you can get 3 guys, make it around league minimum, and maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's an Alex Kerfoot that you move out. Those would be the next guys that I would point to. If the Nick Robertson's not included in the deal, maybe you can rely on him taking a spot and taking a step next year in his development. Maybe someone else from the Toronto Marlies, possibly. It would be nice. Maybe someone from over in Europe. I don't know. But we already have a list of 3 guys long here, and we're already talking about moving out another guy. I think that I would have been all over this, 100% supporting this, whatever the asking cost would have been, if the Maple Leafs hadn't already re-signed Morgan Rielly. Morgan Rielly has 23 points in his last 23 games, and he's even taken on a penalty-killing role so far this year and been fairly effective in it. And I am asking why, while watching the games and seeing him play defense, a lot less. He's been excellent ever since he signed this contract extension. I would so much rather have Morgan Rielly and whatever the astronomical asking price is. You weren't fast enough, person that was typing in the comment section to trade Jake Muzzin to solve all your problems. I don't want to have that conversation. He's been one of the better 2-way defensemen in the NHL the last couple of seasons, like we talked about earlier in the video, him being 27th among all defenders and expected goals above replacement over the last 3 years. I have more of a leash with him. It's 100 feet longer than the one that Justin Holl has. Or Travis Dermott. It's not the same. You're not trading Jake Muzzin to acquire somebody else, even though he is older and Jakob Chychrun is younger, and hypothetically he could be that two-way guy in a couple of seasons. Like we said, he is younger and he could improve. I'm not talking myself into it. I'm just saying that I'm not having this conversation in this hypothetical video about Jakob Chychrun. And I'm also not pre-arguing with everyone in the comments section over it. I'm not gonna bother. The point of these videos is not to play NHL 22. The point of these videos is just to look at the context and to see what is likely and what isn't likely. And I don't see them moving any major pieces here. And to move out the list of guys that you would need to plus one more to be able to have a fourth line, I just don't see happening. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. I guess I'll see you in a couple of days from now. I don't necessarily know what I'm going to be talking about because the NHL has put the season on pause until after Christmas. And I guess we'll reevaluate on how things are going after then. But let me know down in the comment section if you have any suggestions. I knew somebody left a comment yesterday about talking about Jakob Chychrun, and we did this video.